Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Nittany Lion Sports Report. It is live here on Bob Long Sports and housed on the Sports Stream Premium Network. We got a big show for you here this week. Penn State dominant for a while against Villanova. A couple of touchdowns late, clawed that game back to, covering the spread for one, something we'll get to as the game and this show goes on. But Penn State did what they needed to do, got the win that everybody knew they would get. A little bit of a come down from the big win against Auburn. Time to build back up. Penn State takes on Indiana at home, fourth consecutive home game, Tyler, against the Indiana Hoosiers. He is Tyler Gehlhaus. He's my co-host here this evening. Tyler, welcome. And we'll turn the page very quickly on Villanova and start thinking about the rest of the Big Ten season.
Yeah, we're back into the swing of things for the Big Ten. Obviously, after the start at Wisconsin, now we're full Big Ten from here on out. And, I thought it was a good four-game stretch for Penn State, about as good as you could hope for. Still some areas of definitely improvement, especially in the running game and the run block. But a lot of things that people were worried about, such as Sean Clifford. So far, so good from Sean. I think he's playing in the best football he's played at Penn State. 2 interceptions on the year. One was a heave at the end of the half. Not a good pass, but the other one was right off the hands of Keandre Lambert-Smith. That one's on the receiver. So right now I think Penn State's in a good spot. I think they still need to fine-tune some things, mainly in the running game. They've been playing a couple different running backs here and there. But it's been a struggle, and when you struggle against Villanova in the running game, that definitely puts up some red flags, and hopefully they can get that corrected because running game will certainly help you win games in the Big Ten come late October and November.
We'll take a look throughout the Big Ten over the course of the evening, a little bit of a status update for where the conference is, but discussing Penn State, Indiana. Of course, the last time these two teams played was the first game of the COVID season in 2020. Came down to the final moments. Categorically, a very sloppy game from Penn State. Turnovers from Sean Clifford. Mistakes mentally by Devin Ford, who now is not really seeing much time in meaningful games. And, of course, a questionable at best call at the end of overtime that Michael Penix, they said, did get into the end zone, scored a 2-point conversion, won the game 36-35. Revenge? Sure, maybe. But, Tyler, this Penn State team has a lot more ahead of it to worry about than that first game of last year. Indiana, a formidable opponent.
Yep.
It's not going to be the best team anybody has seen, but they've had a very difficult schedule. Led off against the Iowa Hawkeyes, had a first-half lead against Cincinnati, a team that has a big game themselves coming up against Notre Dame, and still, to this point, remains in the college football playoff fringe picture there. But Indiana, they've challenged themselves. There's no doubt that just like Penn State, they've gotten into the cauldron. They've played against high-level competition, and so when this team comes to Beaver Stadium, Penn State should be under no impressions that this is going to be any easy task. This team is ready to play. They've seen speed on the opposition. They've seen big boys with Iowa and Cincinnati. This is going to be a tough football game at 7:30.
Yeah, and Tom Allen, I think he's a really good football coach. I think Indiana has a really, really good coach for their program. Last year was an amazing year, for Indiana football standards. Michael Penix is back at quarterback off of another ACL surgery from last year. He does not look the same that he was at that level he was playing at. They have a really good receiver in Ty Freifogel. Their second-best receiver, DJ Matthews, went out with a torn ACL last week, so he will obviously be unavailable for the foreseeable future. Good tight end, Peyton Hendershot. They have a really good running back in Stephen Carr, USC transfer. So there's a lot of talent still on this Indiana team. You mentioned it, the 2-2 start. I think that, this is more of the typical Indiana team. I think last year was just a really good year for them. They had a lot of things go their way. But nevertheless, it's going to be a tough game. They're physical. And they need the win, just as much as Penn State needs to win. So it should be a really good atmosphere again. Another night game, a stripe out this time. Todd Blackledge on the call. So looking forward to another great atmosphere in Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, Todd Blackledge made the call on Twitter and also said that he was looking for a taste of the town recommendation. So Ye All College Diner, which he's done in years past, gone. I wonder where he'll pick.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's a Penn State stalwart these days?
I would say Canyon Pizza, but that's not going to be the taste of the town.
Yeah, I tell you what, he's got to go there at 1:30 in the morning.
Is there like the corner room?
Corner room would be good. Allen Street Grill.
Yeah,
the tavern is
the
right
tavern,
downtown.
right. So,
but the corner room is right by where the diner used to be.
Right. That's with like the second floor seating, right? With the
The
windows.
Allen Street Grill is.
Yep. Okay. So
that's upstairs from the corner room.
Yep. So, I'm sure it would probably be one of those if I had to guess, but
yeah,
not totally sure.
All free ads in the world here, of course. But Home D Pizza is no longer. That was down Atherton Street. That was our spot when we were in college to go watch the NFL games. It's one of the only spots that had direct ticket, Sunday NFL ticket.
Got to watch the Bills, right?
Have to watch the Bills. It was basically my group of friends and then a bunch of townies. And we had nicknames for these people. We had Lions guy, Titans lady, Dolphins dude, and then our waiter who about half paid attention to us but was an awesome dude. He was checking his fantasy football roster, was a Niners fan. So it was an eclectic bunch at Home D Pizza. But, barely knew ye, unfortunately. Back to Indiana, though, Tyler. So you said that this is back to a, say, normal, quote-unquote, Indiana team. Do you truly believe that?
Well, I just think that last year was such a good year for them. It's almost like Penn State basketball having a really good year type of thing. But, yeah, I do. I think that last year, they got started on the right foot with that ending against Penn State. That ending, spiraled Penn State out of control for 5 straight losses right out of the gate. And I think that Indiana, they did have a very tough schedule to start of the season. But I think you're going to see them more in the middle to the lower pack of this Big Ten East that is very strong right now. And I see them coming in around 4 or 5 in the East. I think Maryland's really getting better down there. I mean, you look at
Michigan and Michigan
State are
That's
better
the
than
difference.
exactly.
Sure.
I mean, I still think it's Ohio State, Penn State, and then probably the 2 Michigan schools. You got Maryland, Indiana, and then even Rutgers has improved. So as we're talking about Indiana, the whole Big Ten East is very much improved throughout, with maybe the exception of Ohio State, even though it's early and they still are Ohio State.
I would not be surprised to see Indiana finish 3rd in the Big Ten East behind Penn State and Ohio State.
In that order?
Well, whatever order you like. We'll find out on October 30th.
I mean, I think that they'll probably be closer to the 4 or 5 range, but it's going to be a knockout, drag them out type of division this year. I mean, the SEC West is obviously great, but I think the Big Ten East is right there behind it.
Yeah, I think so. Listen, Tom Allen has done a great job.
He's a phenomenal coach.
There was a guy coaching before him by the name of Kevin Wilson. Do you remember that name from Indiana?
Yeah, he's at Ohio. Is he still at Ohio State?
He might still be at Ohio State.
He might be.
Yep,
I can't remember.
Yep. And but his claim to fame prior to getting the Indiana job was that he was an offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. And it was Sam Bradford and Landry Jones.
Sure.
Those are the types of names we're talking about here, that he engineered that offense. So he came to Indiana, and they were an offensive firepower for a couple of years. Think back to that game where Penn State won because Shaka Toney made like 4 sacks in the 4th quarter. And
they're always a tough out for Penn State.
And they're
I will
good
say that.
offensive team.
Yeah.
But that team coached by Kevin Wilson could never really put it together defensively. And nobody's going to say that last year's Indiana team was a defensive stalwart. But I do believe that the defenses that they're putting out there right now are better than the Wilson offenses. Wilson went on really not good terms, unfortunately, for him and them. But I think that set a stage where they were getting some talented offensive players. Tom Allen came in, put a little bit more grit into the program. Defenses are playing better. And, yeah, I'm not buying Michigan State to begin with in the Big Ten East.
I'm not sure if I am yet either.
And then Michigan, they've played great. I will give Harbaugh and the Wolverines a lot of credit. Those are some interesting games when they all play each other, all 3 of them.
And what do you think about? I know we're going to talk about the games a little bit later, but what do you think about Maryland? I mean, they're also 4-0. Big game on Friday night. We'll talk about that one a little bit later against Iowa, which I'm sure a lot of people will be tuning into.
Does that ring any bells to you? Maryland, undefeated after the first 3 or 4 games. They got a big Friday night, shut down the campus,
blackout.
and a traditional rival comes to campus.
And
They're
what was
a
the
Big Ten
score?
rival.
59.
I thought it was 45.
40. It was
13 or something
It
like
was
that.
it may have even been more.
59-0 was the one.
It was bad.
Or 66-3 was the one right before Thanksgiving.
Right.
But that was prior to the Auburn game. Sean Clifford's best game as a Nittany Lion when he was a sophomore.
Yeah.
Or redshirt freshman.
He would have been a redshirt sophomore at the
Redshirt
time.
sophomore
Yeah.
at the time.
Yep, that was a really good game that he had.
So I'm going to say no. I need to see them win that Friday night
Yeah.
game before.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good games, especially in the East, coming up. The West seems to be kind of boring. Wisconsin doesn't look like – I mean, Graham Mertz has just been terrible. They had so many chances against Notre Dame.
Though. They are
well,
okay.
if you look at their schedule, I mean,
They're
they have
fine.
Michigan this week. They could easily run. They still control their own destiny in the Big Ten West.
Bingo.
So,
Bingo.
even though they're 1-2, they had an early season bye. They still have everything out in front of them in terms of the Big Ten.
Yep. I mean, they obviously have no shot at the college football playoff
But
at this point.
they also need to get their stuff together real fast because, I mean, Graham Mertz just doesn't look good. And, their running game is still strong. But all we've heard about is they finally have weapons on the outside, but he can't get them the ball. So,
right. How about that game this past weekend, by the way? That was the tale of the flailing Wisconsin quarterback past and present. Jack Cohn for Notre Dame, who couldn't win the job over Graham Mertz, and Graham Mertz, the guy that throws 4 interceptions against Jack Cohn's new team.
And then it's the Notre Dame third string that leads them to the victory.
Yeah.
Because their second stringer was already out, and Cohn got hurt. So. Yeah, it was. When I saw the final score, I was like, "How did that get so out of hand?"
We were on that one preseason. You and I. We were talking about Notre Dame, and we said that this is not the team that last year's team was. Jack Cohn is not Ian Book. Ian Book, for all folks like to say about Notre Dame, he was an elite college quarterback. One of the better college quarterbacks that we've seen in a long time.
Probably one of the most underrated.
Mm-hmm.
And forgotten about. Like the college football.
But he played early.
He did.
He played well from the very beginning.
Yeah, he took him to at least one playoff.
I think it was 2, maybe.
It may have been. Yeah,
unbelievable.
Truly is.
Yeah. So again, that game was surprising to me. Some other surprising games across college football: Texas A&M and Arkansas. Arkansas might be for real, and I know that A&M hadn't been playing well, but into the top 10, deservedly so. They get College Game Day this weekend.
Yeah, Arkansas has another one of the strong. They knocked out both the Giants in Texas, the Longhorns and the Aggies so far, and now they have to travel to Georgia to take on the Bulldogs, and that's going to be quite the test. I mean, Georgia. Some people are even putting them one above Alabama. For me, it's Alabama one until told otherwise. Exactly. So, but Georgia is right there under them. That's going to be tough for Arkansas, I really think. They're huge underdogs, but they've been playing so well, and it's actually a nice surprise because they really haven't been relevant in some time. So, the Coach Pittman down there has those guys going, and like I said earlier, the SEC West and the Big Ten East are going to be fun to watch how they play out here.
There's no doubt about that. And we'll keep talking about the Big Ten East as it develops. But back to this game. Penn State playing Indiana, 7:30 p.m. It's on ABC. You mentioned Todd Blackledge coming back to town, a former Penn State letterman. We're going to talk to Bruce Badgley, who is an IU guy, and he runs Sports Stream Premium Network where we're housed. Perfect time to have him on as our guest picker. Tyler, we did not do so well last week, particularly me, and it's time to raise my hand and say, yeah, things did not go my way.
Well, on the flip side, Ryan
Lennox.
He's in first place right now, 5-1. The only game he got wrong was Mississippi State LSU. He took Mississippi State because he can't stay in LSU. And LSU won a close game, but other than that, he was kind of dead on with Villanova to a certain extent. They covered.
Backdoor.
Yeah, it was, but they looked better than they played really good defense, Villanova. I mean, at least stopping the run, I should say, which was frustrating as a Penn State fan. But it was a good week for Ryan. Not really a good week for either one of us. As you mentioned, you went goose egg. And I went 2-4. Now we're tied up at 11-13 each. So, like we said, don't listen to our picks. because they're really just not that good this year.
You know, I still have the paper from last year here, Tyler, and this is where we put everything in. If you're watching on Sports Stream Premium Network, wow, like we did pretty well last year, and this is pretty awful this year. So
It's still kind of early.
35-12. I've already lost more games this year than I did last year.
You're busy. You're busy with LaSalle. You're calling all the LaSalle games. So.
I did last year as well. Wow. But nonetheless, I just plan on not losing a game the rest of the year. That's
there
how
you
we'll
go.
plan
Run
to
the
do it.
table.
But again, Penn State to take on Indiana this coming weekend. What are your expectations? You're not to say discounting Indiana, but putting them back in their place. What do you expect to see?
Well, I'm interested to really see this, to see Jahan Dotson, for one, go up against, I believe his name's Trayvon Mullen, cornerback for Indiana. Probably one of the best cornerbacks in the country, probably a first-team Big Ten cornerback. I mean, I think Dotson's phenomenal. I put him up there with anybody in the country in terms of, speed, route running, smooth hands, athletic ability. He's not the flashiest guy, but it's like you throw it to him, you know what you're going to get. He's super reliable. So I'm interested to see how, he goes up against a potential first, second rounder down the road. And then I'm also interested to see, as I've been, at first it was Sean Clifford earlier. Now I'm concerned about the running game. I really want to see that get going. I think John Lovett has done some good things. When he gets in there, he kind of provides a spark. And he runs at a different style as the other running backs. He's more like a Devin Ford, quick home run threat, whereas, Lee and Kane are power backs, and just really haven't gotten much push from the offensive line, and it's a little frustrating, especially going up against Villanova. And nothing against Villanova, but the size alone, Penn State should have had their way with them, and hopefully they can get the run game going. I'm interested to see that, and I want to see how Dotson goes up against Mullen.
A lot of that's an offensive line discussion, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you have 4 talented backs. Somebody should be finding their way through if you're getting decent blocking.
And I also wonder, because they've been rotating pretty much 3 backs recently.
Sure.
Ford's got maybe 1 or 2 touches, but they're still kind of waiting, because every year it seems like it has taken a couple games for a running back to really, present itself as a number one. 2 years ago, wasn't it like Ricky Slade? And then out of nowhere came Journey Brown.
Yep.
And Noah Kane actually came in,
Sure.
and then he got hurt, and then it was Journey Brown, and then Journey Brown was amazing. So it just feels like they're still waiting for somebody. I don't know if Noah Kane still isn't 100%. I mean, he looks like he's 100%.
He's never been that guy to just run away from
I
you,
know,
though.
and if the hole's not there, he's not going to outrun you. So I'm not sure really if it feels like more of a line thing than a running back thing. But I'm also wondering if maybe running backs just aren't able to get in the groove because they're rotating so much. I don't know that answer.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that it is probably more a line thing than anything else.
I think so too.
Again, a guy in Eric Wilson who seems a bit undersized at the left guard position. He's done a great job tactically and technically blocking. But again, Rasheed Walker right next to him, wonderful in pass blocking. I think there's still some questions to be answered there. The thing that surprises me is that you have 3 tight ends, really 2, but let's just talk about Brenton Strange, who is an elite blocker at the tight end position. It's the best skill set that he has, and he has a lot of strong skill assets. And then Theo Johnson, who is getting better. Tyler Warren, again, is still working his way into the role. That those guys can't be more involved and more effective in zone blocking schemes.
But I think Franklin actually called them out, the tight end group in general, for blocking. I mean, it has to be better. I don't know if it's more – I'm not an O-line guru, so I don't know if it's coming from the interior. I know our tackles are pretty strong. I have heard that the tight end blocking hasn't been great, but – they got to figure it out because the schedule, they've already had a tough schedule, and the rest of the schedule outside of maybe like Illinois, and I can't even really call you can't really call Rutgers. I mean, they should win, and same with Maryland, but they're not gimmies anymore.
Sure. No.
And not to mention all the other teams you play are ranked.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of them are on the road too. So.
And there's a lot of things to continue to watch. I don't know that we're in a position to make broad sweeping generalizations, but you went from a Kirk Shirakin, before him a Ricky Ronnie, and before him a Joe Moorhead, where it was based around that RPO, and not to say they don't and can't run the offense that way, but Mike Yurcich is more of a spread you out, rely on the quarterback, rely on your arm, and that is what Penn State fans have been asking for, and that's the way college football has been trending. And
Right.
those are the teams that win the football games, and that's what the analytics are telling you, is that you run enough just to keep the team off balance, but
Yep.
the big plays and the winning teams are able to deliver the ball down the field over the middle. And right or wrong, Penn State's been more successful in that than they have been, and they've been less successful running the ball than they have been.
To me, I kind of was expecting the opposite, actually. So it's a catch-22, I guess you could say. I mean, because Sean Clifford, again, appears so far to be playing the best football that we've seen outside of, early in that 2019 season that you mentioned earlier. But imagine if you can just get the run game going, it'll even open up the passing game even more. You have the linebackers come down. It opens up the play action of the tight ends underneath.
Yep, the middle of the field specifically.
But
sure.
Seriously, though, I'm really impressed. I think we have a really good receiving group. They all made plays on Saturday, albeit against Villanova. I hate to keep saying that. I mean, that's a good program.
Yeah.
But you always have to consider the opponent.
Dropped 2 spots in the FCS poll,
yeah,
by the
I
way.
do have, and I mentioned that on the show. I said, will they be docked?
Yeah.
And I don't see I don't know why they were.
I don't get
think
that.
it really matters, because I think if they beat JMU in is that this week or
Harrisonburg.
next? Villanova has a bye, I think.
Yeah, I think that
like
is
the
right.
9th. So that's going to be a tough place, obviously, to go to. But, hopefully, like I said last week, that Penn State game got Villanova ready for that. But I think, this is, in terms of skilled position players, I think this Penn State offense is as skilled as we've seen since, the 2016 with Barkley and Hamilton and Gesicki, Godwin, all those guys. So I think if Sean Clifford can keep protecting the ball and getting the receivers, tight ends, good things are going to happen, but we still need to see a little bit more out of the run game.
So we've been bouncing around over the course of the show here, and we'll keep doing that. But let's talk about one of the quirkiest weekends and really the quirkiest Septembers we've seen in college football in a very long time. Clemson goes down. They got their normal shot across the bow against Georgia Tech a couple of weeks ago, Tyler. Won that game 14-8, and you thought, well, shoot. They had their chance, and now DJU is going to figure it out. Well, guess what? They did not. NC State, again, that we picked wrong, by the way.
And I wanted to go NC State so badly, too. I just couldn't.
I had zero premonition.
Well, I mean, you think that Clemson would figure it out, right?
Yeah,
And
they're better than NC State.
Yeah.
They're more talented.
And now
There's no
they're-
reason that NC State should have won that game.
And
but
now they're 2-2, and they're out of the playoffs.
Yep.
Already.
They are done.
And not to mention, like, their schedule really isn't that difficult. But there's probably still another loss on there somewhere.
I guess. If they're going to play like this,
they're
sure.
extremely banged up.
Yeah.
Their backup running back transferred in the middle of a couple weeks ago. Transfer portal. The starter, the 5-star freshman Shipley, he's out with an injury now.
Yep.
Brian Bresci on a defensive line tackle, he's out for the season with an ACL.
Number 1 recruit the year he
Yeah,
came
I
out.
mean they're kind of dropping like flies right now down there.
Sure.
I didn't expect it.
Sure.
You just kind of pencil Clemson in these days.
And by the way, you talked about folks ranking Georgia ahead of Alabama. Well, that win continues to take on more contests. A 10-3 win over Clemson. That win continues to take on additional context because Clemson is struggling as badly as they are.
Yeah, I thought DJU was going to be. I knew there was going to be a drop off. I mean, from Trevor Lawrence, obviously.
Sure.
But we saw him get in there last year, mid-season, did some good things. Yeah, something's not right down there, and it's going to open up a playoff spot for another team. The ACC is now officially on the outside looking in for their college football playoff hopes.
Yeah, unless Notre Dame's third-string quarterback, not really part of the ACC.
Oh, okay.
Unless they can figure something out, because as poorly as they've
Notre
played,
Dame has a chance.
They shouldn't. I mean, as poorly as they've played, there are losses on that schedule. And one of the most exciting games of the weekend coming up is Notre Dame Cincinnati.
That is going to be an exciting game. Also, one of our pick'ems here that we're going to get to shortly.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame seems like they're like getting ready to take a loss, but every time I think that, they win.
but if they truly find something in this next, because I don't think Jack Cohn is the answer to get them to the college football playoff, but if they've staved off this time long enough to find the identity and figure something out, then more power to them. And that could be a thorn in the side. I know they're not technically part of the ACC. That was just a bit, but but yeah, that game very interesting. And again, college football very wide open. Alabama beats Florida by 2. Again, they'll continue to get themselves together, but they are human. Ohio State loses to Oregon. The Big Ten is wide open. Iowa looked like they might have been as good as anybody in the country. Well, guess what? Iowa State lost another game they shouldn't have.
They lost to Baylor.
Iowa struggled this weekend for a while.
Well, and then you think, and as you're talking about this, Penn State beat Wisconsin and Auburn. And Auburn almost lost to Georgia State this week. Wisconsin's 1-2. But I always, no matter which way you're looking at it, when you beat a team, they're obviously going to drop in the rankings. So they're not going to be as high as they were when you played them. How do you look at it? Do you look at it as where the team ends up or where the team was when you played them, win or lose?
I kind of look at it as where they end up. But just generally, right? It's not like, well, they are unranked. Is this a quality football team?
Right. And the reason I ask that is because SEC, and I think you're going to see it in the Big Ten this year too, is they're going to beat each other up.
Of course.
And the SEC always does that,
of course.
But that's why I'm just kind of wondering because, like I said, I think the Big Ten East is right there behind the SEC West.
Wisconsin's still a solid football team, and it's a good win.
Right.
To answer your question.
The road to start the season, right?
41-13. That game was far closer
than the score indicated.
That's a solid win. Auburn will continue to be a very solid win. I'm not worried about how they played against Georgia State.
By the way, they made a quarterback change.
Yeah,
they're going with TJ Finley now. It looks like
very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. But again, Ohio State questions to answer. Right? C.J. Stroud was injured. The two other guys, Kyle McCord, Jack Miller, struggled for a while. Then got it together. But, Stroud's status still up in the air. And is he the long-term answer, or is it going to be Quinn Ewers next year? He's not eligible to play this year, but it's very interesting. The whole circuit of college football has a different tint now.
Well,
and who's good, who's not, I don't think we know at the end of September.
I don't think we do, but I think it's shaping up for a really exciting season.
Oklahoma barely beats West Virginia.
And they barely beat Nebraska.
They've struggled all season.
Even Tulane.
Yeah.
The first game. So they don't even look like world beaters. I mean, you go into the season, everyone, okay, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. Well, Ohio State, Clemson are out of the top 10. Who would have thought? I mean, seriously, that both those teams would have been out of the top 10. And then you have a Power 5 like Cincinnati that if they went out, they might get like a spot in the college football playoff.
Group of five.
Yes. Power 5 group. This is a group of 5. So it's so early still, but it's shaping up for a lot of excitement. And that excitement really gets going even more this week in the SEC when you have a bunch of undefeateds going at each other.
Good stuff. Well, let's get to that. We'll take a quick break. We're going to come back on the other side, make some picks with our buddy Bruce Badgley from the Sports Stream Premium Network. We'll hear about all the good things he's doing, and then we'll make some picks. Huge weekend in college football coming up on the heels of a fantastic one, shaking up the college football playoff picture on the early side, of course. This is very early, but Penn State's got a big one themselves. We'll tell you the spread, and we'll make our picks next here on the Nittany Lion Sports Report.
Dunphy Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfurt Avenue.
Generation after generation. Our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfurt Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dunphyford.com.
Come experience the Dunphy difference. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back, folks, inside the Nittany Lion Sports Report. Bob Long, Tyler Gehlhaus, and joining us, you see him Brighton Center there, Bruce Badgley from the Sports Stream Premium Network. Bruce, how are you, my friend? Welcome to the show, and I sure hope you're ready to be guest picker here tonight.
Well, I am. I think I'm ready. Done a little homework here. I think that this is a real key week for a lot of games, and I'm really anxious to talk about the ones that we're picking.
Good. Before we get there, as you know, our guest picker segment is where we highlight somebody or something occurring in the Philadelphia region or beyond. We've extended all the way down to Pinehurst, North Carolina this year, so it knows no bounds, the beauty of Zoom. But we talk about somebody doing something cool, and Bruce, I will say that you fall into that category. You are doing something cool. You are Mr. Berks County High School football and beyond, and we want you to tell us all about that.
Yeah, not only are we, doing streaming games locally here for, Berks Catholic, for Governor Mifflin, for Penn Manor, and actually Penn Manor and Wilson will be our game this Friday. But we're raising money for charity. We're like when we do the Penn Manor games, we're raising money for the Penn Manor Coaches Association Scholarship Fund. That's really what SSP Network is all about. We do it in a way that if you want to watch the game for free, just watch the game for free. If you want to donate to the charity, or in the case, even SSP Network, when we do these games, you have that opportunity. So we've collected money for charity, for the Peyton Walker Foundation, for our shows, the WPAL Blitz Show, our FSOD Coaches Corner Show, Pre-Snap Look, which is the District 12, District 1 show. We're trying to highlight all of these schools and all of these kids and all of these coaches so that they get the due that they get and give them an opportunity to raise a little money too.
There you go. And you got another good show on the network that I don't think you've mentioned yet.
Oh, which one is that? Oh, yeah, right. Nittany Lion Sports Report.
Hey, there we are.
Yeah, and it's all on the SSPN page on easternpafootball.com. Gosh, we put all that content all on one page every week. I tell you what, it is great to go down there and look at the SSP Network page to see, all these great shows. And, like I said, it just amazes me when I see the, all of the games we're covering, all of the teams we're covering, all the opportunity that there is to raise money.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's nice to give folks that option to give back. That's really cool what you're doing. One guy that I know you've seen a lot of this year is a guy that we have mentioned on this show, and a lot of Penn State fans are very interested to see matriculate to State College, Bruce. That's Nick Singleton of Governor Mifflin. What have you seen out of him this year?
What hasn't anybody seen out of Nick Singleton? I mean, he's a leader, he's a winner. He's for a game breaker. I've never seen a game breaker like Nick Singleton. I mean, literally on the ground, Governor Mifflin is in scoring position anytime that they hand the ball off to him. Against York High, Governor Mifflin called timeout with 17 seconds left to go in the half at midfield to give him an opportunity to run the ball just one more time, and he took it to the house. So, I mean, those are the things that legends are made of. And, Penn State's really going to get themselves not only a great football player, but a good kid too. And, I know the family. I've known them for many years, covering high school football for Governor Mifflin there. And boy, I tell you what, I mean, I think you guys are going to be happy seeing him in blue and white next year.
Best player you've ever seen at the high school level?
I'd have to say, I mean, up close and personal, yeah, clearly in my mind. And I have not seen a game break.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say I know he's a different position than Micah Parsons, although I guess not really because Micah ran the ball in high school as well. But
That would maybe be the other guy I'd think of in your neck of the woods, but I don't know. I mean, is there anybody else that jumps to mind?
Nick Singleton, I tell you what, as far as a game breaker goes, not really. I mean, those are two good ones that I've seen in and obviously on the the direct beeline there to Pennsylvania, and that's the other thing too. Penn State now has got ranked the number one recruiting class in the country, and a lot of these kids are coming from Pennsylvania. I mean, that's really something when you think about it, of how the talent level of high school football is elevated in the state of Pennsylvania.
Well, that's great, Bruce. Well, appreciate all your thoughts on Nick Singleton, high school football in general, and thanks for everything that you are doing. Tyler, I don't know if you have anything else or if we want to get right to some picks here tonight.
Well, I believe Bruce is a Hoosier.
Yes, he is.
So this is going to be a big week because obviously we have the Penn State game to pick.
In fact, that's a good point. Before we get to that, what do you think about your Hoosiers this year? You still got Tom Allen at the helm. You still got Michael Penix at quarterback. You've had quite the schedule to begin the year. Cincinnati was a tough game. Of course, Iowa, now the number 4 team in the country. How do you look at this team before we actually make some picks?
I think last year they caught lightning in a bottle. It's so much that is timing and emotion, and it was the COVID year and everything else. I think that this is much more of a testament to reality in what a Big Ten schedule is really like, and how teams. Obviously you can get lightning in a bottle here and there, but it's the consistency over time that, really equates to a program. And I'm not entirely sure that, IU is there yet. I mean, Coach Allen has done a great job, very highly emotional guy, but I think he's still got to fill the pipeline up a little bit more with some top quality recruits.
Interesting. Okay. All right. We'll keep that in mind as we pick this game and project Indiana the rest of the way. But what do you say, Tyler? You want to get it underway?
Yeah, here we go. We're actually going to start off in the Big Ten. We'll save Penn State, Indiana for last. But we have a Friday night showdown between two unbeatens. Iowa Hawkeyes travel to take on the Maryland Terrapins. Who do you like and why?
Well, I tell you what, I like Iowa. I do. I think that, Maryland's still even though they're off to a 4-0 start, I think that they're still I like Iowa. I mean, I really do. I think that that's a really solid team over there. And even though it's a road Big Ten game, I like the Hawkeyes.
I like the Hawkeyes as well. This is going to be confident talk, Tyler, coming from a guy who was 0-6 last week. But who do you like and why? I like Iowa because they're better than Maryland, a lot better than Maryland. And again, we mentioned it earlier in the show, Bruce, but there was a game several years ago in late September where Penn State traveled to Maryland. It was also a Friday night kickoff. They shut down the school. It was a blackout. It was supposed to be the biggest game in program history. And they walked away losing by 30-plus points. I could see a similar fate, maybe a little less, because Iowa isn't the highest-scoring team in the world. But I think it is definitive this weekend in College Park.
I think it'll be a pretty close game. I think Maryland's going to come out with a ton of energy. But I think Iowa is a better team, which is why I think they're going to win. I also want to see Penn State and Iowa both win this week. That way we likely have a top 5 matchup going into next week. I just don't know. I think maybe Iowa looks ahead to Penn State next week, and Maryland might be able to catch them. But I think Kirk Ferentz has been there forever. I think he'll have his guys ready, and I think that they are the better, fundamentally sound football team, and I think they will win in the end.
I do believe that it's really difficult for the traditional Big Ten teams to still go into the non-traditional Big Ten teams, which I call, Rutgers and Maryland, and the juices just don't flow the same as if they, go into, a Camp Randall Stadium or, into Champaign or what have you. So, but I still do like Iowa.
All right, we're going to stay in the Big Ten. This is a noon start Eastern time on Saturday. Undefeated Michigan travels to Camp Randall to take on the 1-2 sluggish on offense but very good on defense Wisconsin Badgers.
Yeah, I like Michigan, and I like it for, from the heart, in that I've always been a fan of Jim Harbaugh. And I always think that when Michigan is relevant, the Big Ten it just seems to grab the headlines more. But I do think Michigan wins this game. I think that, the kind of the bloodletting that Wisconsin took at the hands of Notre Dame last week, I think that's going to be hard to recover against a team like Michigan. And I think Jim Harbaugh is going to have them ready.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if this is like a bounce back for Wisconsin or if they just stink. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think Graham Mertz is very good, but I think the rest of the team is pretty solid. I think I'm going to take Wisconsin. I don't really have a great reason for doing it, but I think I'm going to take them over a Michigan team. They weren't as convincing as they could have been last week, and I'm still not quite sure that they're back.
I'm going Wisconsin too, and I don't know why, because I've seen him play twice this year and really wasn't impressed with Graham Mertz, obviously, either time. But I just think being at home, I think that they're more desperate for the win. And we were saying earlier on the show that Wisconsin still has everything in front of them in terms of Big Ten West, Big Ten championship hopes if they take care of their business. And that starts on Saturday, really call it a must win for Big Ten title chances for the Badgers early in the season. So I'm going to go Wisconsin as well. Next, we're going to stay in the Midwest here. Big game. Cincinnati takes on Notre Dame, battle of top 10 teams in South Bend.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Kelly went from Cincinnati to Notre Dame years ago, and both teams, I think Cincinnati scoring on average of about 43 points a game. Notre Dame just hung 41 on Wisconsin, on a team that had a pretty good defense. So this could be a really high scoring game. But I like Notre Dame. Clearly, in my mind, I think Notre Dame wins this one. But I have a fondness in my heart for Cincinnati. I mean, I like the Bearcats. I saw a couple of football games down there in my day. So, but I still like Notre Dame. I actually saw more games at Notre Dame than I did Cincinnati. That's not the reason why I'm picking this game. I'm just trying to, let everybody know the breadth of my football, stadium acumen here.
There you go. That's good. That's quite impressive on both ends. Nippert Stadium seems like an interesting place to watch a game. And of course, South Bend is South Bend. I want more than anything, Tyler, to pick Cincinnati. I really, really do.
We know where this is going.
But guess what? Yeah, I have to pick Notre Dame. I'm interested to see where you go, though, because just a couple of weeks ago, you picked Indiana to beat Cincinnati, and they had them on the road for a while.
Yeah,
they had them.
But I got Notre Dame in this one. I do wonder what happens at quarterback, right? Is Jack Cohn going to be ready to go, or do they rely on what is now, you said it earlier in the show, their third stringer, but
Drew
provided,
Pine.
Yep, off the pine, in fact.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think that Notre Dame's going to find a way to win this one. It might be ugly, but I got them beating Cincinnati.
Cincinnati has a bye. They had a bye. Notre Dame obviously had a big win over Wisconsin, Soldier Field. The game's in South Bend. I'm taking Notre Dame. I think it's going to be a really good game. And Notre Dame really hasn't – we talked about this earlier. Outside of the fourth quarter on Saturday against Wisconsin, they haven't looked great this year. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a really big test. This game has huge playoff what's the word I'm looking? Implications, right? Yes. Because neither team – well, Cincinnati's in a conference, but they're the group of five. Notre Dame is considered the independent. So this is pretty much a playoff game in early October. So I'm going Notre Dame as well. Next, we're going to go down to Death Valley, where the Auburn Tigers come to town to take on LSU.
Easiest pick of the weekend. I mean, LSU wins this one. I mean, is Auburn anything more than a dumpster fire? I mean, they're really they had a really tough time last week. Didn't they fire one of their assistant coaches this week? Like
they did fire a receivers coach.
The receivers coach, right? Who was very highly touted, and because of issues of the fact I think the guys were averaging less than 80 yards per game. I guess that they had to have the assistant coach be the sacrificial lamb there. I don't even think this is even close. So we won't waste our much time here. LSU.
That's interesting. My gut was Auburn when you first brought this up. LSU has a lot of questions going back to their loss to UCLA. They beat an average Mississippi State team. The thing that I'm hung up on, Tyler, is it being in Death Valley.
And at night.
So we'll have to get an Auburn fan on the show next week to tell us which place was louder. Scouts on to tell us the truth, the whiteout or Death Valley. I guess I'll take LSU because if Bruce says this is easy and it's a blowout, and why are we talking about it? I guess I'm going LSU.
Oh, my.
I am going LSU, and so far I have the same picks as you, which could either be really good or like last week really bad. But it looks like Auburn's making a quarterback change. They did at the end of the Georgia State game that they squeaked off,
which is interesting because he played well against.
Well,
Penn
and
State.
TJ he did, but TJ Finley, the quarterback, actually transferred out of LSU, and now he's going into Death Valley.
Right.
So it's going to be there's some interesting storylines there. And I think it's going to be closer than Bruce thinks, but I do think LSU will win. But it's going to be pretty close, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I would turn that game on, Bruce. I think it'll be worth your time.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. I don't watch much SEC football. I really don't. I mean, I allocate mine to Big Ten, Pac-10. So
we appreciate that, especially the Big Ten love.
All right. Well, you didn't mention anything about the Big 12, but that's where we're going next. We're going to head down to Texas, where the Longhorns travel to take on the Horned Frogs of TCU.
See, I've always been a Horned Frog fan. Even when they were pre-Big 12 and were trying to, they were up for the national title and finally found a home in the Big 12. But I tell you what, I think Texas has really turned the corner. I think that they're playing some good football this year. And, I like the Longhorns rather than the Horned Frogs.
I'll say two of the most BS things in the history of either the college football playoff, BCS era. Both of those things occurred against TCU. The first was the year where both Boise and TCU went undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Neither of them were going to make the championship game. It was only two teams, BCS at the time. And we were going to get the chance to see what Boise was going to do against the big boys, what TCU was going to do against the big boys. And guess what? They put them both against each other in the Fiesta Bowl. Boise State against TCU. That was an absolute disgrace by college football. And either shielding those teams from getting blown out or shielding the big boys from getting embarrassed against I don't know what the idea was, but an absolute disgrace that was the bowl game that they picked there. Second one was when Baylor and TCU were down the stretch. Baylor had beaten TCU in the Pac-12, in the Big 12 regular season. There was no Big 12 title game at the time. It was on a weird phantom late pass interference call that Baylor had beaten TCU, and it was 55-52 or some crazy score, right? But TCU was above Baylor because of how they had done against other top Big 12 teams, Texas, Kansas State, etc. TCU was number 3 going into the last college football rankings. The last week of the season, I should say, they beat Iowa State, who was bad at the time, 55-3. And what happens in the college football playoff final rankings? TCU drops to 6. Baylor drops from 4 to 5, and Ohio State jumps from 5 to 3. That's right, or maybe it was 4. Basically, what it was is TCU was solidly in, dropped all the way back to 6 after beating a team, conference foe, by 52 points. And if that isn't telling you what a sham the college football playoff committee either was or still is or something, I don't know what does. So I know we're talking about Texas against TCU, but two of the biggest travesties in the history of college football were conducted against your Horned Frogs, Bruce. That said, I'm picking Texas.
Yeah, I guess after all that, the encyclopedia, that gave him the answer to the riddle there. Texas. I'm going TCU because Texas just isn't back yet. They're not back, and they're not going to be back for maybe another 1 or 2 years. So that's where I am. I'm going to go TCU, flip it a little bit between Bob and I. And now we're going to the game that we've all been waiting for. Penn State versus Indiana. Penn State is currently 11-point favorites. So give us your winner and your score and how you see the game playing out, if you don't mind.
Well, I tell you what, I think that the Penn State running game is going to get healthy this week. I mean, everybody was, really thinks that, the Penn State running game, oh my God, what's wrong with it, whatever like that. I think that they're going to get their act together on the ground this week. And unfortunately, I think that they're going to do it at the expense of my Hoosiers. I think Penn State is a team, on the rise. As I mentioned, I felt that, last year was kind of a lightning in the bottle year for Indiana. Everything just fell the right way. I mean, even though they beat Penn State, even though Bob doesn't think they beat Penn State, I do. We've reveled in that year, but I just don't think it's the same season for Indiana. I think they're going to have a difficult time against Penn State. And I actually like Penn State to cover. I like it maybe about 35-20.
So that game last year, a couple inches, a half inch or two, doesn't matter when you're deciding where to hang the picture on the wall, Bruce. It does matter when it's crossing the pylon or not.
Right, exactly.
I
get that.
It was 2020. That's how we're gonna call it 2020.
But no, listen, you guys played better than Penn State.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's no argument about that. Penn State played poorly, and you guys played a great game.
Indiana had been close for quite a few years too.
Against
they
Penn
always
State.
played Penn State.
Yeah, we were saying that earlier. They always play Penn State tough, and even the Ohio States of the world, they play tough. The Michigans, they seem like they're always in a dogfight with those teams.
Yeah, but no, you deserve to win that game. To be fair, Tyler, remind me of that spread.
-11 for Penn State.
Boy, I like Indiana to cover. I like this to be a touchdown.
Thank you.
There you go. Let's call it a 10-point game. I'm going to take that use that -11 to my advantage. Let's call it 31-21 Penn State.
I'm pretty much on the same trajectory here as Bruce. I'm going 34-21 Penn State.
So our difference is a field goal, huh? But it's
and the difference in the spread. So I do think PSU covers 34-21. I hope you're right, Bruce. I hope that they can get the ground game going. Sean Clifford has looked phenomenal for, what Penn State fans know him to be. And I think a run game would even help him even more. And especially with the slate they have coming up with Iowa, they have Ohio State at the end of October, Michigan State, Maryland. Got to be able to run the ball. I hope they can start doing it this week. I was hoping for it last week. Didn't see it against Villanova, but like you said, hopefully it's at the expense of the Hoosiers defense.
11's a big line, guys. I'm just saying.
It is, but it's also a night game and a stripe out.
Yeah.
In Indiana, as you mentioned earlier, Bruce, they haven't looked like they did last year. Penix specifically. I mean, they just struggled to beat Western Kentucky. So that's kind of why I like Penn State here.
Even though it was a road game, I mean, come on, and you just put the matchup in, and I don't know, I'm trying to put matchup between Western Kentucky and Villanova team. They're playing, each playing an FCS opponent. Is Western Kentucky FCS or FBS?
I kind of thought they were BS, but to be honest,
Yeah.
USA maybe?
that might be BS. I don't really
Yeah.
pay much attention to the Hilltoppers, so.
Yeah, right. But it's still, with Indiana struggling and Penn State obviously doing what they needed to do, even though they didn't play well, or had some, that was the overriding factor for me. And
I get it. But you were coming off Cincinnati and in between the night game at Penn State. These are still 18 to 22-year-old kids. Hey, we'll see. No need for me to advocate for the Hoosiers, but we will see what happens out there. Bruce, awesome having you as always. Thanks for housing us on the Sports Stream Premium Network. We love what you guys are doing. Happy to be part of it. Anything else we should know before we go?
Nothing other than we got a very interesting game in high school football. LaSalle and St. Joe Prep that we'll be covering, on our pre-snap look show this week. I think that's probably the premier matchup in the state of Pennsylvania this week. So anybody who wants to see what I have to say and about LaSalle and St. Joe Prep, I've had opportunity to see them both play this year, in person. So, we'll see how that goes.
Cool. I might be calling you up to talk about prep. So keep it going on, buddy. Appreciate you. Thanks for being our guest picker. He's Bruce Badgley. He's Tyler Gehlhaus, and I'm Bob Long. Thanks for being with us here on the Nittany Lion Sports Report, housed on the Sports Stream Premium Network. Enjoy the football, everybody. We'll see you next week.